Satguru Maharaj ki jai, Sacha Darbar ki jai. Thank you for joining us for today's spiritual discourse. Hope everyone's doing well. I want to start with a little thing that happened with me a couple of days ago. We ran out of dish soap in the house, and so I went to the supermarket, get some soap. On the way there, my wife calls me, says, while you're getting soap, also pick up some potatoes and pick up some onions and pick up a few different things. So I get to the supermarket and I have it in my head that I'm here to get soap. But as soon as I walk in, I see all the vegetables, so I start getting vegetables, and then I got the potatoes, I got the onions. Then I saw some other things that looked good. I thought, this looks good, let me get this too. So I get those things. Then I start walking around the supermarket and I get other things. I figure I'm here anyway. Might as well get the best use out of my trip. It was cold outside, I'm already wearing my coat and everything, so ended up being, I went to get one thing, I had the whole shopping cart full before I left. So I check out, get home, unpack everything, putting everything away. And my wife is like, where's the soap? And I'm like, what do you mean? Like, you went to get soap and you brought all this stuff, but there's no soap. I'm thinking to myself, like, was I supposed to get soap? And I kind of think back, like, oh yeah. The reason I left the house and went to the supermarket was to get the soap. But then you called me and you said, get potatoes. So then I started getting potatoes and I started getting something else. And one thing led to another. And I have no soap. So I forgot, I forgot to get it. What does this have to do with anything? It just shows, and this isn't something unique to me. That happens to all of us. We go to do something and we forget to do the one thing that was important and we do something else. And then we remember again later, like, oh, I was supposed to do this, and then we go back and we do it. It happens a lot. Now, in spiritual life, there's a very beautiful saying, very apt saying for this, where Lord Krishna is speaking to Arjuna. And he says to Arjuna that you've had many births. I have had many births. And in those births, we have been together. I remember all of them, and you don't remember them. And that is the difference between me and you. I remember, but you have forgotten. You have forgotten what is truth. You have forgotten what actually happened. You have forgotten your past. And you have forgotten yourself. And he says that the main issue, the main problem, they're speaking about sin and virtue. And he says the one sin, if you can call it that, that leads to every other problem is forgetfulness, is this loss of memory. Once you forget who you are, once you forget what you are here to do, everything else that follows is just dependent on this first mistake of this forgetfulness. So no matter what is done wrong, no matter what happens, everything is dependent on this one thing, this forgetfulness. So he says, if you want to remember, let me tell you, you are a particle of the light of God. You are eternal. Your soul is not bound. And he goes on and tells him. So, if the first problem, if the first sin is forgetfulness, this loss of memory, and in our spiritual life we practice remembrance, in spiritual life we make a practice out of this remembrance. And so I forgot the soap. How is it that once we've forgotten something, someone reminds us, but we seem to forget again? How does this, what's the process that allows us to forget? It is lack of concentration. So, a lot of people, I remember when I was younger, if I had to remember something, I would repeat it to myself as I'm walking. I would walk around the house, or I'd be going somewhere. Before there were phones, I'd have the address written down, but I repeat, okay, I gotta go here, I gotta pick this up. Then I gotta go to this next place and pick that up. By constantly remembering something and being focused and concentrated on that one thing, it's a little harder to forget. So, what do we do? Or what happened? I want to break down how I forgot to get the soap. So first, I was leaving to get the soap. We are being born to unite with God. Unless you reach the low point, you cannot reach the high point. When you breathe, your lungs fill up with air. If you don't breathe out completely, your lungs cannot completely fill up. Every process that happens in creation is this up and down, left and right, opposites always. We cannot remember if we do not forget. We cannot ascend to the great heights of spirituality if we are not debased. In every aspect of life, there is this opposites coming together. So I remembered, or I knew I had to get soap. I begin on my journey to get the soap. I get a phone call. Also do this. That's where it begins. The also. The potatoes led into the other vegetables, and the other vegetables led into all the other things that are in the supermarket. If there wasn't the also this thing, my mind would have never diverted from the soap. What is necessary? One-pointed concentration. One-pointedness. That when there is a goal, when there is some mission, when there is some task to be accomplished, until that task is accomplished, your mind should not move off of that topic, off of that subject. The saints, the prophets, they tell their disciples the same thing. That if you want to approach God, if you want to approach the truth, then become one-pointed in your concentration, one-pointed in your devotion to that truth. The moment that something else comes into the picture, doesn't matter what it is. When I was going to get the soap, are potatoes evil? No, they're just not soap. When I was grabbing the potatoes, were the other vegetables poison? No, they were fine. But what did it do? It took away that one point of we need to get soap. In a spiritual life, when our focus is on God, whatever takes away that focus breaks that one-pointedness, breaks that concentration. Doesn't matter what it is. We can believe, oh, this is also something good. We can believe that, oh, this is also something worthwhile. But it's not so. It's not God. So, in our day-to-day life, in our meditation especially, what is most important? One-pointedness. When you pick up your goal, when you focus upon your goal, the moment that your mind turns to something else, what is the reaction? Or what should the reaction be? Oh wait, I have to get this soap. Bring it back. The moment that the mind turns to one thing, that one thing becomes many, and the many become a multitude. And then you forget about the soap. So Krishna says to Arjun, we have both had many lives. I remember and you do not. I remember and you do not. And that is the only difference. One-pointedness. When someone reminds us of something, we often in our day, our minds or our thoughts, they turn to God. And just as quickly they turn away. When in the middle of our day, the Prophet Muhammad, he said that no matter who you are, as a human being, God Himself calls your mind to Him multiple times a day. But we also choose and we decide to call our mind back. If you'll pay attention, you'll also notice this, that throughout the day, your mind gets called to God and it raises to some height, higher than normal. And you will intentionally call it away. Right now I'm working. Right now I'm doing something. Right now I'm driving. And our mind comes up with many excuses. When God calls us to one-pointedness, our mind says, no, do this. No, we need potatoes. Forget about the soap. The mind does this. If we were one-pointed, then the distraction would be powerless. But because we are not one-pointed, the distraction holds power. When God calls your mind to Him, the only work that needs to be done is to keep it there. Don't move it again to some other place. Because once you move to one place, that one becomes many and the many becomes the multitude. And then it's lost and then it's forgotten. The Buddha, speaking to his disciples, he says, the way that a vine grows on a tree, it begins as something barely noticeable. And it begins to wrap around that tree. And as it wraps around the tree, you see less and less of the tree and more of the vine. And he says it doesn't matter how great or how large that tree is or how small that tree is. Once the vine starts to wrap around that tree, eventually it will destroy that tree. First, it will drain its nutrients. It will drain its life force. And then it will cover the entire tree and that tree will die. The tree will perish. And he says that vine is like forgetfulness. That first you forget one thing. And as you continue to forget, that vine grows and grows around that tree. If the caretaker of that tree saw that a vine is growing, what should he do? He should remove it. But the longer that no one removes that vine, the more and more it drains the power from that tree. And eventually that tree is destroyed. So he says, the first sign you see of that vine of forgetfulness, tear it off. Tear it away and stand tall like a tree. Grow. When again you see that vine begin to grow around the base of the tree, tear it down. It has no place. Once you allow it to grow, the end is only destruction. There is no other end. The vine starts to grow. Sometimes it adds beauty to the tree. But the end is destruction. And it doesn't compare to the beauty of that fully blooming tree. So, if you can take one thing away from today's message, don't forget. And if you forget, remember again. The things you have learned on the spiritual path, the things you have heard, the things that you have put into practice, the things that you have forgotten to practice, remember them. And sometimes people get discouraged because they remember something over and over, but they don't do it. But do you know that it takes years sometimes for something to become action? First you hear it, then you hear it again. And the longer you hear something, it becomes a part of you. And when it becomes a part of you, it takes longer still for that to energize you into taking action on that subject. Just like a child goes to school and learns, and they learn different subjects, and they learn and learn, they keep going to school, then they take interest in one particular subject and they say, this is what I want to do. And then they learn more and more about that subject until they're a doctor, or until they're a lawyer, or until they're a baker or a seamstress. Doesn't matter what it is, but the learning and the ideas settle inside of us, and they take time to get translated into action, that we can actually do this thing. So if you think to yourself, I've been hearing this, but I haven't taken action, it's okay. Let it grow inside of you. Let it grow inside of you till that point where it has filled you. And when it fills you properly, and when you are ready, that idea will sprout and become action. As long as you keep remembering, and as long as you keep hearing, that becomes action. You will do. So, if you have forgotten, remember. If you have remembered, take action. If you forget again, remember again. And if you can't remember, God reminds you multiple times a day. God calls you to Him multiple times a day. Pay attention. Listen for that call. Listen for that sound. If you don't listen for it, you'll never hear it. But if you listen, if you pay attention, you can hear His voice. And when you hear His voice and your mind ascends, then don't turn away. Because the best way to not forget is to stay focused on your subject, stay focused on your goal, to not forget the soap. Say to yourself, soap, soap, soap. Say to yourself, God, God, God. If you never lose your concentration, if you never lose your focus, how will you forget? So all that you have learned, all the inspiration that you have received, put it into practice. Continue meditating, improve your meditation, continue improving your meditation, and your goal, keep it always in front of you so that you know what you strive for, what you strive to achieve. As Lord Krishna said to Arjuna, you are a part of God. You are light. You are a child of God. Claim your birthright. No one else can claim it for you. Boliye Satguru Maharaj ki jai, Sache Darbar ki jai.